Do you know who I am?
Your guardian, founder of the Lanterns. May I ask you a question?
This is when most candidates ask, why me?
I know exactly why me.
Fear is the most powerful force in the universe. Show me a species that's fearless, and I'll show you something on the extinction list.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my Lanterns Episode 3 trailer video. There's a whole bunch of Easter eggs, WTF moments, references to the comics, so we will break it all down. All this Sinestro trailer footage really does seem like it's feeding into all of our theories about them building towards the Yellow Lanterns. Most of the trailer here seems like it's set up for John Stewart's backstory, like it'll be a big John Stewart backstory episode, but there's also a promo with a bunch of Sinestro and Hal Jordan's conversation that continues with him after the end of Episode 2. And the core theme of that part of their conversation, I'm sure it's a much longer conversation, is all about fear, the yellow portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, so it makes sense that Sinestro is obsessed with fear. He tells Hal Jordan, fear is the most powerful force in the universe. Show me a species that's fearless, and I'll show you something on the extinction list. So he's viewing fear as something good. It helps keep people alive, keeps you aware, keeps you ready to survive. So he's not thinking good and evil here the way the Guardians would be teaching people that the yellow spectrum of fear is all about bad stuff. And based on what Antan was telling John Stewart about in Episode 2, I definitely think they're doing that part of the Red Lantern's backstory. There are a lot of theories that he's actually playing Atrocitus, and they're from Sector 666, and that is the sector that the Manhunters historically wiped out before the Guardians tried to brush it all under the rug and hide the last remaining Manhunter on Earth. Because that is almost exactly how it happened in the comics. The whole idea is that the Guardians create the Manhunters because they're androids, they don't experience emotions the way that normal biological beings do, so the Guardians feel like they'll be a more efficient police force, they won't be susceptible to all the different emotions, they won't succumb to any of them, but they eventually get perverted by someone else who messes with the code, and they eventually start wiping out all organic life all around the universe, and Sector 666 was one of the places that they just completely wiped. Atrocitus, though, who was from there, wound up surviving. He and the other survivors of Sector 666 in the massacre wind up forming an organization called the Five Inversions that go against the Guardians, that may have a big beef against the Manhunters, the Guardians, for what they did.
You think the Green Lanterns came first? You really don't know.
I really don't.
Both Atrocitus and Sinestro separately learn about the Prophecy of the Blackest Night, the secret verse inside the books of Oa that the Guardians had tried to keep secret this whole time. All about the different electromagnetic spectrum having their own forces like the Lantern Corps, wielding the power of will. The actual prophecy says, in the coming future, each color of the electromagnetic spectrum will have its own forces like the Lantern Corps, and these forces will fight against the others in a war of light across the universe that will lead into an event known as the Blackest Night, the worst of the hidden prophecies of the Book of Oa. But it all starts with Sinestro, and he learns about the prophecy. That's why he rebels against the Guardian Corps. He tells Abin Sur. Also, Abin Sur winds up learning the prophecy from Atrocitus, who winds up ultimately killing him, and that's why he crashed in the comics. But on the show, they're swapping in the Manhunter for this, so Hal Jordan, at least right now, believes that it was the Manhunter that killed Abin Sur when they landed on Earth. But it ultimately goes back to the Guardians wanting him to take the Manhunter to Earth, and the Guardians trying to hide the Manhunter so they could hide evidence of their mistake, and also lock Sinestro up so that he doesn't talk to everybody else all about the yellow spectrum of fear and all the other Lantern Corps out there that could be possible. The producers and the writers also implied that one of the reasons why the Guardians want to replace Hal Jordan with John Stewart is because they're worried that Hal Jordan will also break bad too, and some of Sinestro's ideas, especially about fear, will rub off on Hal Jordan, and it sounds like they definitely will. So the way the show is adapting all the different Green Lantern lore from the especially more recent comics too, with all the other electromagnetic spectrum forces, is that they're starting before the events of the Sinestro Corps War, because it all starts with Sinestro there and then eventually builds up into Blackest Night with all the other forces choosing their champions and then disseminating all their different rings and their different corps. But it does kind of seem like Antan's group might wind up being the Red Lanterns eventually, and they're sort of like seeding that on the show. So we might see multiple Lantern Corps after this series, like James Gunn is trying to eventually build up to something like that. But I think if we're talking about timing, like who becomes what first, I think Sinestro would get the yellow ring first and start the Sinestro Corps before the Red Lantern Corps becomes a thing. And since Blackest Night, they've actually increased the number of different emotional spectrum forces. There's red rage, orange for avarice, yellow for fear, obviously, green for will, which is Green Lantern Corps, blue for hope, indigo for compassion, violet for love, gray for sorrow, black for death, as in Blackest Night, white for life, which is also part of Blackest Night, came out of Blackest Night, and then there's the invisible spectrum.
Brightest day in blackest night. No evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power. Green Lantern's light.
So if Lanterns is sort of laying the track work for them to start with the other basic emotional spectrum forces, I also kind of wonder if they're going to introduce the idea of Volthoom teaching the Guardians about wielding the different emotional spectrum, because originally Volthoom is the one that taught the Guardians that they could wield the emotional spectrum. During episode 2, they also revealed from the superhero wiki inside the DC universe, which I thought was kind of funny, that Sinestro wound up killing one of the Guardians of Oa, who are super powerful. My early assumption before I've seen episode 3 or like other future episodes is that it might have been one of the Guardians that was really trying to keep a lid on the Manhunters and the other secret verses in the books of Oa about the other emotional spectrum. Because the way they spin Sinestro on the show, and I think they're just adapting this from the comics, is that he's meant to be one of the greatest Green Lantern in the history of the Corps, and he's also meant to be right, like Thanos was right memes, Sinestro was right. He'll probably eventually do very terrible stuff, like he's definitely going to become a little bit evil in the future, but they want to start out with him actually coming from a place of justice and right. Like everything he's done up to this point is meant to be fully justified, and the Guardians are meant to feel very shady. Because all the crazy stuff that's happening with the Manhunter that's hiding on Earth all goes back to the Guardians. They're responsible for all that. And I know a lot of people are now wondering if it might be Zoe who winds up being the Manhunter, because she shows up in places all the time with John Stewart. Seems like she's trying to twist him against Hal Jordan a little bit. She seems like she knows way too much about the Green Lantern Corps. And it would definitely make sense why Macon, if he winds up being human, doesn't want to reveal the identity of the Manhunter, but also has all this alien technology at his place on his ranch, because it just comes from Zoe. But the other big theory people are now wondering about is why the hospital was empty and why the town was so empty during the town hall meeting. Like, why would everybody literally just empty out of the town to have this one meeting? It seemed like it was going nowhere almost. Is the entire town, kind of like a Green Lantern construct, just an elaborate hiding place for the Manhunter that it's constructed around itself? There are a lot of people that are wondering if all the townspeople are Manhunters except for Carrie Kane. I think that she's real human, like she's a normal person. But it would be a crazy twist if the entire town winds up being fake, and it would answer a lot of questions. But we'll see how many Manhunters there are, if it's just the one Manhunter or if there's a bunch of Manhunters now. The actual episode is titled Outcast, which is both a reference to outcasts in society, Green Lantern Corps, maybe a reference to Sinestro and to Hal Jordan himself, because he feels kind of like an outcast. And it seems like a big John Stewart backstory episode, so maybe there's something that happens to him as a child during his upbringing where he views himself as an outcast. Also, the spelling is similar to the Outcast musical group. At the beginning of the trailer, you see John Stewart in what looks like an empty, defunct mall, falling into a bunch of mattresses in the middle of this foyer here. So it's not clear what's happening, but it seems like a test. Maybe the Guardian of Oa, played by Laura Linney, is just giving to him here, or he's testing himself. But I think that's why he's falling through the air here. He's testing himself, and that's why the mattresses are there to catch him. He then meets with Laura Linney's Guardian of Oa, who seems like she's giving him an interview and has been watching him his whole life, expected as a candidate for the Green Lantern Corps. Like they just sense that he would be a very powerful Lantern, so they've been watching him this whole time. It's hard to tell exactly when this is happening in the timeline. I'm assuming a little bit before the events of episode 1 at least, if not a couple years before. But it seems like he's been in the military, and now he is out, and now he's become an architect. The showrunners explained why they have Laura Linney here, a Guardian of Oa, looking like Laura Linney instead of looking like a giant blue alien. One, for budgetary reasons, probably, so they don't have to use so many special effects and it's cheaper for them to make the show. But also because they say that in the context of the series, the Guardians of Oa can change their forms to be comfortable to whatever planet they're on. So they'll just talk to John Stewart here looking like another human like he is.
Do you know who I am?
Your guardian. You are the founder of the Lantern.
Doesn't this also give you vibes of what they were talking about with the Manhunters as well, being able to change their form into anything, hide perfectly inside other species, as well as other things going on inside the Green Lantern Corps, people changing their form to disguise themselves like the aliens from Antan's planet, which might be Atrocitus in Sector 666, also making themselves look like humans. We got a lot of people running around on Earth disguising themselves to look like humans. And she's definitely giving you some sinister vibes, like, yes, the Guardians of Oa are good, they want to police the universe, but their ideas about how they do that wind up leading them to do kind of shady things across the comics, and now they're just adapting that for the actual show itself. They definitely seem like they are not above trying to sweep their mistakes, the Manhunters, aka under the rug, so to speak. Please do not ask us any questions about Manhunters, that is forbidden. Do not ask us about the yellow spectrum of fear or any of the other electromagnetic spectrum. So there's a very curt back and forth between slightly younger John Stewart and her, where he says he knows exactly why she has selected him to be part of the Green Lantern Corps as a candidate. And it's all because of what happened when he was a baby after he was born. We see a flashback with him in his baby crib with the green light outside his family house that we saw in the 1996 flashback when he was a little bit older, but it's her guardian character, or one of the guardian characters, coming to visit him as a baby. We see his parents wake up in their bed, not really sure what's going on, and then his mother with him in her arms talking to the Guardian of Oa. Based on his age in 1996, I'm assuming he was born in the late 80s, so this television broadcast they're watching of Hal Jordan, notice he has his full comic book costume and his mask on too, and it looks way fresher because he's only been Green Lantern for a couple years at this point. You see what seems like a gun flash over the screen, like someone in the background is firing their gun, and it's meant to set up the idea of John Stewart's father firing the apples off of his head when he was younger on a periodic basis to test his fear, because it seems like the Guardian of Oa taught him that he would need to have no fear in order to become part of the Green Lantern Corps. So it just became this really toxic idea of trying to do everything he could to train fear out of his son, John Stewart. So it answers a couple questions why his father was so crazy. He was also part of the Marine Corps, like John eventually became part of the Marine Corps. We see the flash of the gun, and John Stewart's father seems like he hasn't slept and shoots the TV with Hal Jordan, so it seems like he kind of hates Hal Jordan for some reason and the Green Lantern Corps just in general. Maybe it's because of what he eventually tries to do to try and train his son to eventually join the Corps. We get a really quick scene of his mother carrying him as a baby in right after his father, seems like she's kind of upset about what's happening with his father. Then another time jump with him a little bit older, they get him a Green Lantern shirt to wear, like their own homemade costume that they make for him. Not totally clear what's happening with his mother in the driveway here with his father. She just seems very, very dissatisfied with the way this is all going and he's being brought up. Probably not happy about his father trying to shoot the apples off of his head. We get another time jump of him in the military corps jumping out of the back of a plane here into what seems like this lake. Not really clear what kind of operation he's on here. I think it's just meant to show his time during the military corps and how he had no fear. He tried to maintain no fear while he was on these different missions. And when he says, I know exactly why me, it's because he's been conditioned from birth to be part of the Green Lantern Corps. Like this whole life has been dedicated to having no fear. And it's all probably because the Guardians detected that he could become a potentially very powerful Green Lantern. One of the best examples of that is him being able to maintain his bird construct across a couple different states without the lantern ring being nearby and being relatively new, relatively untrained as a Green Lantern with the ring. Even Hal Jordan and Antan did not really believe what he was doing. Wow, this is amazing that you're able to do this.
You would have at least given me a hoorah.
Hoorah.
There are a lot of people that also asked if the show is making John Stewart too OP. There was a recent Justice League issue, I think it was the more recent Justice League number 14 in 2018, where John Stewart moves beyond needing a traditional Green Lantern ring to wield the green emotional spectrum. So that is something they did in the comics, but it was a relatively recent addition to his character. Maybe they'll try to incorporate this into the series a little bit, but I think he will still eventually use a Green Lantern ring like normal Green Lanterns by the end of the series. They're not going to completely skip over him using a ring, but I think there'll be other moments where he's able to keep constructs around for much, much longer than you would normally expect. Antan told John Stewart that he only had 48 hours to find the Manhunter, so my early assumption is that they actually get some answers as to who the Manhunter is towards the end of episode 3, and that's either when Antan's group shows up or it's the beginning of episode 4. Pretty soon, 48 hours I think is meant to be within the next couple of episodes. So it does seem like a lot of the central mysteries of the show will be answered by the middle of the season, and then the show will get way crazier in the back half of the season. So if you're one of the people that feels like the Green Lantern show, Lanterns, has not been cosmic enough, Green Lantern enough, it seems like they'll get to that towards the back half of the season. Everyone post all your reactions in the comments below and all your theories about who the Manhunter is and what's really going on inside Rushville. My full episode 3 video will post next Sunday night after they release it, so be sure to enable alerts on my channel so you don't miss that. There's also a bunch of other stuff happening this week. I'll try to do videos for everything as quickly as possible. Everybody click here for that new episode. I'll update the link as soon as I post it, and click here for all my other Lanterns episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.